We're almost at the end of yet another year. Can you believe it? Throughout November, there will be a few observances, including Youth Month. Remember, as you go along, to set an example and empower the youth of today, as they will build and lead a better world tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us here inside Jamaica Magazine. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Please stay with us. We have more coming up after this.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry, and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, November 7, 2023. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is calling for the application of harsher penalties to deter what he's described as wanton acts of terror by criminals. Mr. Holness's comments follow Monday's killing of 2 children and an adult in Salt Spring, St. James. While expressing condolences to the families of the deceased, the Prime Minister says he has no doubt that the police will bring the perpetrators to justice. He asserts that Monday's deaths demonstrate the threat gunmen and gangs pose to the foundation of a free and democratic Jamaica. The Prime Minister is assuring citizens that his administration will continue to invest heavily in increasing the capacity and capability of the security forces to intersect and interdict criminals. Recent legal measures include a new Bail Act and Firearms Act, while amendments to the Offences Against the Person Act are now before Parliament to increase the penalties for murder.
We must speak with one voice in condemning this wanton and brutal murder of our children. Likewise, we must also speak with one voice that we will apply the penalties with the greatest deterrence effect to the criminal terrorists to ensure that such senseless act of terror never happen again. Enough is enough.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Education and Youth is partnering with the security forces and other stakeholders to push its anti-gang initiative in schools. The Safety and Security in Schools unit is leading an anti-gang week of activities under the theme Gang No Cool, Stay in School. Portfolio Minister Favour Williams is appealing to parents and guardians to become familiar with the common characteristics of gangs. These, she says, could be in the form of a name, common signs, colors, or symbols.
So if you see your child come home and they're flashing a sign that you've never seen, ask them about it. If you see them have on some colors, something, question them about it. These are some of the signs that they are beginning to stray.
Minister Williams was speaking at the Rosetown Holiness Christian Church in Kingston for the launch of the Anti-Gang Week of activities in schools. On November 8, the Safety and Security Unit will hold a virtual anti-gang town hall meeting from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. November 9 will be observed as Anti-Gang Day, and schools will hold special devotions on November 10. During the activities, school resource officers, justices of the peace, and church leaders will visit schools and speak with students. This initiative is being facilitated by the Counterterrorism and Organized Crime CTOC investigations and the Community Safety and Security branches of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the 2 water policy documents tabled in Parliament last week will address immediate water security concerns and lay a robust foundation for long-term climate adaptation. The Prime Minister tabled the National Water Resources Master Plan for Jamaica and the Rainwater Harvesting Planning Guidelines during last Tuesday's sitting of the House of Representatives. The National Water Resources Master Plan will provide strategies for the development of water resources, as well as an inventory of available water quantity, quality, and usage. It will also provide information on 4 areas to enable efficient planning and allocation of resources within the water sector. Mr. Holness says the master plan will also outline total consumptive allocation per watershed management unit, current and projected water available for consumptive allocation, and national water balance.
The tabling of the new Water Resources Master Plan, particularly in the context of climate change, represents a monumental step forward towards sustainable environmental stewardship. This comprehensive plan acknowledges the critical intersection of water management and climate resilience and provides a strategic blueprint to navigate the challenges posed by a changing climate.
Rainwater harvesting is also to receive national focus.
We are now making national recommendations for all new residential, commercial, institutional, including schools, industrial and office buildings to be constructed with rainwater harvesting capabilities to augment potable and non-potable water supply.
The Ministry of Education and Youth is pursuing youth employment as a major priority area of focus. Portfolio Minister Favour Williams says this focus has led to the establishment of several initiatives, policies and programs that are aimed at nurturing the abilities, aspirations and potential of young people across the island.
We understand that education forms the backbone of any prosperous society. In accordance with this vision, the government has increased funding for education, ensuring that more young Jamaicans have access to quality schooling.
Minister Williams was speaking during the official launch of National Youth Month 2023 with the theme, The Year of Youth, Trending for a Sustainable Future. The Education Minister says investments being made are improving the technical and vocational educational and training sector. This is to provide students with the skills needed to survive in a fast-changing work market.
As we celebrate National Youth Month, let us celebrate the concerted efforts of the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division in creating an enabling environment for young people to flourish. Together, let us reaffirm our commitment to nurturing, inspiring, and empowering our youth, for they are the architects of a prosperous and inclusive Jamaica.
And finally, the Bustamante Hospital for Children is boasting several significant achievements as it celebrates 60 years and charts a path for the future. Chairman of the Bustamante Hospital's 60th Anniversary Planning Committee, Dr. Brian James, says innovations have enabled several notable firsts for the hospital.
Liver transplants, open heart surgery, animal therapy, pediatric oncology service, pediatric burns care, and pediatric critical care are some of the services we've added over the 60 years of our existence.
Dr. James was speaking at a recent JIS think tank. He was joined by Senior Medical Officer Dr. Micheline Richards-Dawson, who revealed that the hospital was looking to expand the infrastructure and equipment to further improve patient care.
We're really looking to expand the Bustamante Hospital for Children. We need additional wards as we develop and add more specialists. We actually have persons who are continued in further training overseas and locally as well. So we will have in our first pediatric dermatologist who is actually being pediatric dermatologist who is being trained now. We have our own pediatric neurologist who is being trained.
The Bustamante Hospital for Children was established on November 6, 1963. The hospital is marking its 60th anniversary with a year-long celebration. As part of that, on November 12, it will host the annual Dr. Leela Winter Commemorative Conference virtually under the theme Bustamante 60 Years and Beyond, Evolving Therapeutics. The highlight of the celebrations will be an awards banquet on November 18 at the AC Marriott Hotel. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
Crime and violence is infecting our youth. We must work together to rescue them from the gangs, engage them in productive activities, and safeguard Jamaica's future.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Jamaica House Weekly is next, where we bring you highlights of what happened in the Office of the Prime Minister this past week.
Navigating the 5.6 magnitude earthquake and building a more resilient and sustainable water resource system.
Our disaster response entities know what to do. This government is investing at an unprecedented rate in our water infrastructure, and that is without question.
These are the stories coming out of the Office of the Prime Minister last week. You're watching Jamaica House Weekly. I'm Marjorie Gordon.
to say to all Jamaicans, remain calm.
That was Prime Minister Andrew Holness encouraging Jamaicans on Monday, shortly after the country was shook by a 5.6 magnitude earthquake. The epicenter of the quake was approximately 10 kilometers south of Buff Bay, Portland, and hit 35 kilometers northeast of Kingston. Preliminary data from the earthquake unit estimates the intensity of the shaking from the quake at 7.
What we have seen is that the damage that has been assessed is not significant, but nevertheless, we are taking all precautions. And we have not received any reports of death. And so we give God thanks for sparing us the worst.
Teams from the National Disaster Risk Management Committee were mobilized to carry out preliminary assessment. As chair of the National Disaster Risk Management Committee, Prime Minister Holness also rounded up members for an emergency meeting. He urged persons to seek out reputable licensed professional engineers to carry out structural assessments on their buildings.
During an earthquake, structures will exhibit damage, but not all damage is structural. And therefore, you need the professionals to be able to ascertain whether or not the damage is structural, which would mean that you may not be able to occupy the premises.
The Prime Minister said that although resources would be stretched if the impact of the earthquake was worse, the country would still be able to respond.
Certainly in terms of management, in terms of technical know-how and experience, and in terms of the commitment and will to keep Jamaica safe, yes, we are very strong in that regard. In terms from a fiscal perspective as well, yes. And as those fiscal buffers become stronger and our economy becomes stronger, we will invest more in equipment and technology, which will help us to be more resilient.
He gave assurance that the country had a well-developed disaster response mechanism.
It is very comprehensive. It takes care of the political directorate of the country. Then it goes down to the executive, to the public sector bureaucracy, and to our partnership with private sector and civil society. So it's very inclusive.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness took 2 major steps last week in pursuit of water availability and supply in the country. These are in the form of the National Water Resources Master Plan for Jamaica and the Rainwater Harvesting Planning Guidelines. Both were tabled in the House of Representatives last Tuesday. The master plan will provide strategies for the development of water resources as well as an inventory of available water quality, quantity, and usage.
Additionally, it will allow the government of Jamaica to evaluate methods to meet water quality and quantity objectives.
Further information will be provided on 4 areas to enable efficient planning and allocation of resources within the water sector.
The plan outlines total consumptive allocation per water management unit, current and projected water available for consumptive allocation, and national water balance.
Moving on to the water harvesting planning guidelines, Mr. Holness says this will institute the harvesting of water at a national level.
We are now making national recommendations for all new residential, commercial, institutional, including schools, industrial and office buildings to be constructed with rainwater harvesting capabilities to augment potable and non-potable water supply.
Meanwhile, the pilot distribution of 3,000 black tanks to promote water harvesting in rural communities begins this week. Prime Minister Holness says this is being done under the pilot phase of the Rural Water Household Resilience Program. The target is communities that are predominantly in the eastern part of the country. The tanks will be distributed in the constituencies that were hardest hit by the drought in the first 6 months of this year.
It is important, Mr. Speaker, that these tanks will be distributed in areas which are outside of the utility footprint of the NWC or in areas where infrastructure is significantly degraded and unable to provide predictable water supply. Each location that a tank is installed will be mapped and geotagged to ensure accountability, but also to ensure we start the process of properly assessing our true national storage capacity for water.
Mr. Holness told the House that the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, had provided a grant of $60 million to purchase the tanks. Meanwhile, $250 million in grant is coming from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation through the Rural Water Supply Limited to facilitate coordination and distribution of water harvesting systems and tanks.
Members of Parliament in these constituencies would have submitted 230 names each for recipients of these tanks. The same oversight process as the social housing program will be used in assessing the recommendations.
10 young people from each of the constituencies will be trained by the Heart NSDA Trust to do the installations and will receive a stipend for their work during the project.
And once it is complete, we will move to expand the program nationally to include all rural constituencies.
And that's it for Jamaica House Weekly. Be sure to join us next time for more of the news stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.
Come, let me take you down to the past.
The 1 year, I'm gonna make you jump like there's no tomorrow. From your ankle to your knee, under your bottom and your waist. But watch you now, better me show you how it's done.
The country recently experienced a 5.6 magnitude earthquake, which gave us quite a scare. Did you know that there is a lot that needs to be done before, during, and after the construction of buildings to ensure their full structural strength?
We ask developers, we ask persons who have an interest to develop land, and even overwater structures and sea, we ask that you adhere to the policies and the guidelines that we would have presented in the different policies, guidelines that the National Environment and Planning Agency has. We have the development order, we have different protections and acts that we regulate. We have the Natural Resources Conservation Act, we have Wildlife Act, we have several acts. We have a plethora of policies, guidelines, and we have what I would call a structured legislative framework that can guide persons, and we request and ask that persons adhere to these regulations and these laws that we have. They're here to protect you, and they're here to guide you and how you develop your natural and built spaces, and also to ensure that we have soundness in our development and also to protect our people.
We ask the citizenry to have your buildings designed by the reputable persons, whether it be architects or engineers, and have the construction executed by a reputable constructor or contractor. There are some fundamental areas inside of the building that we expect the constructors to focus on in the event of an earthquake. And these areas are the foundation and the columns. Those are critical to keep the buildings up while there's an earthquake. So we ask that the junctions where you can have shear taking place be properly constructed. in order to have the building lasting longer to allow the citizen or the occupant to leave the building.
In the event of an earthquake, we must be always mindful of the fact that one, you cannot move or you should not be moving about when the shaking takes place. Duck, cover and hold until after the shaking stops. After the shaking stops, if you see the need, then you can call the nearest fire station, 110, or most important, 112 if you don't have any signal. So if the cell service goes, you will see your cell phone saying emergency calls only. Once you press the call sign, it will take you to 112. 112 will automatically take you to the country that you're in, to the emergency services, and it will get assistance to you. But most importantly, persons need to know the number for their nearest fire station.
How many people do you know who are interested in beekeeping? Now, how many of them are young people? As we celebrate Youth Month, let us highlight a few who saw this venture as a viable source of income. Let's see what all the buzz is all about.
Me and my sister got started when we were very young. I think I was 6 or something around that age. And my mom had 4 hives. And that is the beginning of success.
The name of our family business is Maccabee Enterprise. Here at Maccabee Enterprise, we are all beekeepers, down to my 9-year-old sister, Camila.
Working with the bees is nice. It's less challenging than back in the days. Don't want to sound too old. It is fun now. I am more confident. Yeah. It is calming, soothing. Takes you out of this world, bring in another. So it's fun. It's actually fun. My role here on the farm is using an extractor. To extract honey, there are many ways. I will be explaining 2 ways. First is the professional method where you use an extractor. So you have a capping knife, a knife with like a serrated edge, and you would uncap, which is a thin sheet of wax on top of the comb with the honey inside. So it's like a seal. So you use a knife and uncap that. Then you put it in the extractor and spin it, and it would flash out on the side of the extractor and drain to the bottom, and then you leak it out into a bucket. The other way is, well, when you don't have an extractor, is that you would use a capping fork, or you could use a regular fork, and you would hold the frame like this, long way, and you'd use the fork and gently scrape the frame. So you're taking off the comb, you're removing the comb from the frame in a sense. But you'd have on the frame, there is a sheet of wax that we would put on as beekeepers, foundation. So it would guide the bees, to build more small cells that would get more workers in the hive.
From the bees, we get 5 main products, right? We have pollen, propolis, beeswax, honey, and royal jelly. So based on those 5 things, we actually think about what we can do with those 5 things. So in beekeeping, we actually have honey flow periods and we have dirt season. Those are the 2 main periods. In between, we have like a pre-flow and pre-dirt, basically. But okay, so in our honey season, that's the time when they're on production. They're bringing in their honey, their pollen, everything on top. But for like in St. Thomas, there is like a 6-month period where there's dirt. There's no honey, no much honey that we can reap. There's just enough for them to feed themselves and their babies and be able to stay alive. In the dirt period, when there's not enough honey for us to harvest and be able to sell, we do things like remove our old combs and boil it out, and we get wax. With the wax, we do like the body butters, we do candles, lip conditioner. So that's the wax. With the pollen, we actually collect the pollen, and the pollen is a very good multivitamins. So we actually collect the pollen and dry it and package it for sale. For the royal jelly, we don't do a lot of work with the royal jelly. As we go along, we are actually developing products. So for the royal jelly right now, we put it in our honey wine. And then again, the honey wine is made from honey. My involvement in making the byproducts are production. I do most of the labels. I have help, so I can't take all the credit, but most of the labels are from me. I do social media marketing, so most of the WhatsApp texts, Instagram, they might mostly be from me. My younger siblings' involvement in the business is some help with the production, so there is some small things like shredding the wax that they can do. They help with the bees as well, because we're homeschool and we kind of tag along with our parents right through and through. So with the bees and with production. And my younger sister, she's very artistic. So when I'm actually doing the labels, sometimes she would draw this beautiful picture and I would actually use that as part of the label.
I have 4 personal hives for myself. I have 3 long struts, which is the regular kind of box that you would see that holds 10 frame, and they would stack on one on top of the other. And I have 1 top bar, which is a 30 frame box, which goes a long way. And it only has a top bar. It doesn't have the top bar with the square. It doesn't have a frame, it's just the top bar. My advice to other youth interested in beekeeping is you have to be persistent, and you have to be confident, and you have to be committed to beekeeping.
Beekeeping can be very wide. You don't have to just stuck with the bees, the sting, the honey. There is so much more that you can do. You can do candles. There is actually a shortage of beeswax candles. And beeswax candles are very easy. You mold, you wick, your color if you need, and you're done. Lip conditioner is another easy one. And if you go online, just take some of your time out of your texting and just research some products that you can actually do from the products that you get from the bees. The 5 products I mentioned, there's so much more.
This is where our program ends, but only for today. Be sure to join us again tomorrow on this same station or over on our website at gis.gov.jm. On behalf of the entire team here at the GIS, I'm Edwin Atkins, and thank you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.